All right. I think we're rolling, my man.
Cool, man.
Everyone, welcome to episode 30 of the Ministry of Freedom show. I'm Jim Moats, and that dude live from North Carolina, you might recognize David Chatman. Guys, if you haven't listened to episode 23, go back and do so and then return to this show because the backstory is amazing. And I think it's going to be beneficial to get caught up to get the maximum out of today's show. So, welcome back, dude.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
We got some interesting stuff to catch up on and some topics we're going to dive into. But
Cool.
before we do, let's catch the audience up, man. It's been 2 months. So what have you been up to? What's life looking like for you? And what's going on, man?
You know, and forgive me for one. I'm in the garage, so if you hear cars and birds, and if you also hear a copious amounts of dogs barking, that's my dog. So,
Okay. And I've got
but
cat problems here. So if you hear cats, so real life's happening while we record. It's cool.
exactly. But yeah, man, it's actually especially like in the past couple of weeks, I think it's there were some days and weeks when I got back from hanging out with you. I was getting I was pretty frustrated with just life. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to me and my family by like kind of floating around in this space, not having like this direction. And but actually, the past like 2 or 3 weeks, patience is starting to pay off, and I can see some pieces put together, and things are starting to kind of roll in the direction I thought they were going to kind of roll. And I'm having some doors open up here and there, and I'm just trying to kind of pick which ones. So, when I flew out there and hung out with you, I come back and I was like, man, I don't really want to go back to like just a normal 9 to 5 situation. And I was really trying not to, like super hard. And therefore, I told my wife a couple of times, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that might be something I have to do for a while, and which is
Yeah.
fine or whatever. Well, it's like as soon as I started looking into that, she was like, she sent me a link, and apparently around here was in dire need for substitute teachers
Oh,
in the area. And I was like, so I talked to the lady that runs it around the county, and she was like, yeah, you can work somewhere new every day if you want. And, we pay this and you can do this and do that. And it was like really an open ended position. And I was like, yeah, I could do that.
yeah.
Plus, I was like, she's like, you can pick if you want to just do high schools and middle schools. And I was like, okay, that works. So I kind of got the ball rolling with that. And man, within the first couple of days, I was having some like really profound like interactions with some of these kids. Like I had I had one kid. He actually, I had him in a class one day at a high school, and he walked in. He was a really in shape kid, and man, we just talked like. I probably did the bad thing, but I didn't make him do anything in class the whole time. And me and him talked like training and life, and just like how how now I thought he could grow up and be a successful man, and whatever he wanted to do. And so he immediately, when we get out of the class, he looks me up on Instagram,
Of course.
and he goes and listens to both of the podcasts I had put
Oh,
up on there, like
yeah.
which is yours was one of them.
Yeah.
And he actually messaged me that night at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and he was like, hey man, I know this is kind of weird. He said, but I think God led me to you today. He said, because I never go to school. I'm never in that class. I don't have to go to that class if I don't want to. He's like, I just kind of felt like I wanted to today. And he said, and lo and behold, you're here, and we talk all class, and you tell me these helpful things. I think what a part of it was he didn't have a dad, and he had a stepdad, but it wasn't his real dad. His dad had kind of abandoned him or whatever. And he was like, man, just keep doing what you're doing. He's like, I'm so glad I met you. Like, I hope we get to meet and talk again. And
Yeah.
that was within the first like week of me doing that. So long story short, like some of the days doing that job has been bad. And I was honestly just doing it because I was like, well, I need some money like now, and
Yeah.
I need to be productive. And, I kind of felt like it would lead into something. Well, this past week, I actually got offered a job at, do y'all have, do you know what an alternative school is?
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. So I got offered a job at an alternative school that I had been to a couple of times. And I know the first day I went there, I noticed like one, these kids are pretty bad off.
Yeah.
A lot of them come from situations like I came from, if not worse.
Sure.
Two, most of the student body in the school is comprised of boys. And three, most of the staff is women.
Of course.
And kind of seen this gap going on there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just noticing it. And I was like, a lot of the kids, obviously, anywhere I go, like, they're like, oh, they're like, well, man, how much do you bench?
Yeah. Right.
And
Exactly.
stuff like that. So it's like, it's really easy to like break the barrier with
Yeah.
them. And, a lot of those kids were on that same stuff. They're like, well, man, how much do you lift? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And so I go and eat lunch in the lunchroom. Well, these kids just start beating the crap out of each other. I mean, they stand up at the lunch table and just start getting after it.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, all right. So I go over there and like, yoke one of them up, carry him all the way to the office with his feet dangling. And he kind of turned around on me and he was like, and I would have done the same thing. He's like, man, don't put your hands on me. And I was like, son, I know you're mad. Just go ahead and calm down, because that's not, that's not how that's going to work out,
Yeah.
And so I actually, and everybody kind of looked flabbergasted at somebody handling that situation.
Yeah.
And you could tell it happens a lot. And there's a couple of men that work there, but they're not.
Yeah. They might not be capable enough to diffuse.
They're not capable enough. And I also don't think that they are, they're just kind of frail.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of hardened teenage boys, they're not giving those guys respect.
Yeah.
And, I actually had to go back there the next day, and that same kid that had, I kind of had to yoke up, and he turned around on me, come up, shook my hand, apologized.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he was like, man, he's like, I'm sorry. I said, man, I get it. I was like, I've been in enough fights in my life. I understand. Like, I was like, but you just can't be acting like that, dude. And I actually had a couple of conversations with some of those kids that were about to graduate, and they were just, you could tell they were lost, didn't know what they wanted to do. And I shot them straight when I talked to them. I was like, guys, you guys are about to enter a cold, hard world.
Yes.
And I said, listen, I grew up in a very similar situation to a lot of y'all, and y'all have got the same mentality as I did when I was an 18-year-old boy. And I tried to tell them how much it didn't serve me to have that attitude, carrying it on to an adult life.
Yeah.
So long story short, like I said, probably a couple of days later, I mean, and those interactions were making me feel pretty good. Like I felt like they were listening to, there was a couple of them obviously is in one ear and out the other, but there was a couple of them that were like really taking note to what I was saying. Cause I was very descriptive in the way that I grew up and some of the experiences that I'd had as a young adult. And long story short though, a couple of days after that, the principal texted me at like 9:00 at night. And she's a female as well. And she said, she was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, there's been a lot of talk about you being here, and the kids have talked about you since you've been gone the past few days. That's all they talk about is like when you were coming back to help teach and all this other stuff. She was like, if I have a position open this coming school year, would you be interested in working for us? And I told her, yeah, I'm going to go talk to her this week about it. And we're going to sort some things out. And I was telling my wife, I said, like financially, that's probably not the position, like the best thing in the world, because it's a public school, it's an alternative school. I said, but if that works out, I said, I really think just for now, that's probably where I need to be at.
Yeah. That's impact, man. And that's what
Yeah.
I mean, money aside, if you're doing something where you come alive, it's, man, you're on the right path. That's freaking crazy, man.
I've also, I've really come to terms with, uh, it'll come back to me. Like I, I've, I feel like this is the first time in my life I've ever had full faith of like pieces coming together.
Yeah.
And that if I'm putting myself in the right place and doing the right things and like following kind of what my path is laid out to
Yeah.
be and taking advantage of some of these situations, it's like I'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
I've kind of let go of like me feeling like I need to have complete control
Yeah.
of, well, I've got to make this much and I got to have this and that and this. It's like it's working itself out.
Yeah, there's just so many scriptures that come to mind as I sit and listen to your story. God supplies all of our needs. There's no need to worry. There's just so many of these things. I heard something cool today. So during my morning training, I was listening to a podcast, the Sean Ryan Show. Jordan Peterson was the guest. I like Jordan Peterson. He's pretty cool. He said that when we transition from having faith in ourselves and who we are into having faith in who we can become, the shift happens.
Yeah.
And obviously the big picture is because he's a Christian guy too, but we have faith in God first and foremost, but so many of us put our faith in us. And that's where that control comes in, right? I can fix this. I can do this. And we want to let Jesus guide our lives until things get chaotic. Then we got to take the wheel back.
Yeah.
And when we stop having so much faith in ourselves, but we do have a belief in faith of who we're capable of becoming, man, life that hit me this morning. That's really, really good.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny, there's been times since I left Washington and had that experience, there's been times I've been like, man, what am I going to do? And the big thing is like, I think the big thing for me was financially letting go of some things.
Yeah.
And just trusting. One, it was realizing what I needed and what I wanted and finding the difference between those things.
Yeah.
And because there's been some times, I'll check my bank account and I'm like, damn, man, what am I going to do this week? And then just out of the blue, something comes up and it's like, well, then I'm taken care of for the week or two. And then it'll kind of up and down, but it's like every time I get to kind of worrying about it, something comes up and I'm taken care of somehow.
Yeah, that scripture I referenced says God will meet all your needs. It doesn't say anything about your wants.
Yeah. That's something I've had to really just be like, I've never done that. If I wanted it, I bought it.
Yep.
And I thought I needed all of these things. And now I think it's kind of this situation, while be it stressful sometimes, makes me figure out I'm like, well, I don't really need these things. Yeah. I'm being taken care of. I have a home. I have a vehicle. I have a healthy me and a healthy family. And we've got a food cram, a fridge full of good food and all this, everything's taken care of. Like, what more do I really need?
Yeah.
Getting to the point of being, just selfish wants.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, I've really kind of let go of some of that stuff. While be it, I'll look at some things. I'll be like, damn.
Me too. Yeah. You see the cool truck that goes down the street. You're like, yeah, I need a cool truck.
I seen a guy this morning, and I was taking my kid to school, and he's got a freaking nice Power Wagon truck, dude. I love this truck. Every time I see it, I'm like, man. And I told my kid this morning, I was like, you see that truck, dude? He's like, yeah. I was like, I don't know when, but I'm going to get one of those. Yeah. I said, it's not going to be right now by any means. I said,
man,
your dad.
There's been so many God winks, thin places, whatever you want to call them, that I've experienced of late, and just little things. Sometimes it perk me up. The fact that you just said that yesterday, I'm perusing, I'm on my phone, I'm looking through vehicles, and I typed in Ram Power Wagon.
Yeah, dude.
I love the Power Wagon because it's a 3/4 ton. I mean, it's just, I'm like, and as far as new trucks go, they're not crazy money. I mean, they're as much as, you go get a GMC or whatever, but man, the Rams, I'm about it. So that's we're on the same page on trucks.
Yeah, they're sweet, man. But it's like, it's a, but at the same, it's like, man, that's a want. And it's just like, I'm starting to have faith in the fact that all that's going to come.
Yeah.
I thought that the situation I was in, I am now, I envisioned me doing this 10 years ago when I was at my lowest. And it took 10 years to come to light. And here I am just now starting to make some of these moves. So I think everything that's going on too is also just kind of taught me just patience more than anything.
It's so good. I'm in a season now where the direction that I know I'm getting just pushed towards is continual encouragement. So I believe in the spiritual gifts, and the Bible's clear on that stuff. And one of my gifts is encouragement. And I was going back through I'm reading in my Bible the other day, and I've used this Bible since 2014. So about 10 years. So, and I always make notes, and I date my notes that I'll put in the pages of the Bible. And I saw one from about 9 years ago, and I don't even know exactly where my mind was at that point, but it was, God, please show me how I can have a ministry of encouragement. And I think, dang, and how crazy that, what I call the show. And I'm like, I just want to be that, and to help show people, men primarily, because that's where my heart's at, that they can build the life that they want, and that there is hope. And I just think that, man, I come alive when that's where my heart's at. And you're coming alive because you're doing the same thing. And how many different venues there are to do that is amazing to me. So that I just think it's
Yeah. Well, and another thing, so last time, when I was with you, I told you I've been looking at, trying to put the word out of maybe me training the high school kids.
Yeah.
So since then, I've got one kid who's a special case kid, not a good home life, no money. His parents, they've got their stuff going on.
Yeah.
And the kid's awesome, man. He's a good kid, but I just seen it in him one day. I was like, man, if this kid somebody doesn't reach out and help this kid, he's going to be a lot of wasted potential, because he's in 8th grade and he's 6'3", 250 pounds.
Dang.
And I told him, I said, hey man, I'll train you. I said, you don't live far from me. If I have to, I'll come pick you up. If your dad drops you off, I'll take you home, whatever. Just get to my house 2 days a week and I'll help you out. And he's been coming to me a couple of months now. And it's funny, like the first time he was here, he hardly spoke. And then the last time he was here, he just told me his whole story.
Yep.
And it's a story for a 13-year-old to be telling you, man. Yeah. It kind of makes, I'm not gonna lie to you, when he left, I cried.
Oh man.
Because I was just like, I knew where he was at,
Yeah.
And he's in a situation he couldn't. I told my wife, I was like, man, if we were financially better off, I would adopt that kid.
Yeah.
And just take him in. But all of that kind of led into my kid. His wrestling coach is the high school coach. And we were talking one day and he was like, hey man, he just approached me and he asked me, he was like, would you be okay with training the high school and middle school wrestlers?
Oh, wow.
I told him, I was like, yeah. He said, you'll have full access to the high school weight room. They've got a freaking sweet weight room at the local high school here. Everything you would need. And I told him, I was like, yeah, man. I said, it's kind of funny. I said, because if you wasn't going to ask me in the next week or two, I was going to ask you, you know? And he come up and he asked me finally. So it took a couple of weeks to kind of put together. I told him, I said, I need to come up with a plan. You need to tell all the kids and all their parents, I'm sure some of their parents might look at me and kind of wonder, like, who's this guy that's going to be having my kid a few hours a week,
Yeah.
So I actually had my first workout with the kids last week. And I genuinely thought, I was like, I'll get 5 or 6 kids. And the coach told them, be there at 6 o'clock, just go straight to the weight room. And dude, I had like 20 something kids show up.
Amazing.
And that's not even all of them. Some of them are still stuck in other sports.
Yeah.
Or they have some jobs. They can't, they're older high school kids and they've got jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
But all the ones that showed up, and these are boys and girls. It was like 20 something kids the first day.
Great.
And I was like, I
Yes,
really wasn't
man.
prepared for that. But
So certainly your path, your nudges are getting you towards the kids, man. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's right in that age range, man.
Yep.
Like, it's and it was really nice because after that, after we got done, and I'm like, okay, clean this crap up. This place is a mess.
Yeah.
I had a couple of them come up to me, high school boys, look me in the eyes, shake my hand like a grown man,
Yeah.
and tell me thank you, because otherwise they weren't going to have that opportunity.
Yep. That's
And I
great, dude.
and I told them, I was like, dude, I said, just keep coming back. I said, we'll
Yeah.
get better and better and better, and before you know it, man, you'll be a new person.
Yeah. So there's hope, man, because I get a little cynical about that generation. But yeah, man, as long
Some of them are exactly what you expect. I
yeah,
promise.
yeah.
Some
Oh,
of
for
them
sure.
are. Some of them, they're lost, and
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like, I've talked with a lot of them, doing the substitute thing, and it's like some of them, and I hate to say this, man, it's like it's hard to have hope in them.
Yeah.
But man, there's some of them. It's like they're just built different.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird because some of them that are built different come from good homes, and some of them don't come from good homes,
Yeah.
and they just want better.
Yeah.
But I think it's the fact that the ones that want better are the ones that are pulling themselves away from like that stigma of their generation.
Absolutely. So I refer to that. What I wrote about in my book that's coming out is I call those the willing. In every generation, there's a group of people that I call willing, the willing. And those that are willing, we can make an impact on because we have hearts to do that. We have
Yeah.
to be careful to not spend all of our energy trying to pull people up the rope. And it doesn't mean we just cast them out, but we need to make it known, hey, when you're willing, I'm here.
Yeah.
And Jesus said that in one of my favorite stories, and I think it's in John 5. He talks about a guy, he just says to the dude, hey, do you want to get well? So he approaches this dude who's, is paralyzed. He's a complainer. He's a grumbler, and he doesn't do what he needs to do to get himself healed. And Jesus says, "Hey, man, first question: do you want to get well?" So he offers that call, just like for us. We can have a God moment where we see God impact our lives, but ultimately we have to be willing because the free will is what it's all about. If not for free will that we've been given from God, then we're just robots that we're forced to do whatever our Lord tells us to do. We have free will to worship and honor God. And we have free will down here to be willing to have the life that we're capable of. And we have free will to go be idiots. And we have to be there for both those groups. And I think it's important for us to have the discernment to know the difference.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's a really good point, and I haven't really thought about it like that. It's like, it almost, I've gotten in my head sometimes. I'm like, man, some of these kids need help bad, and because they're just lost. I mean, they're
yeah,
just they're doing what they're seeing at home and stuff,
yeah,
and it's like, but then you have to kind of come to the realization. It's like, man, if you waste all your time on one, you might bypass 50 that you could have helped
yeah.
that are willing to get the help.
That's it. So we need to focus on the willing because that's where the impact's going to be made. And don't forget, when our focus is primarily on the willing in our spheres of influence, as we help them develop into who they're capable of being, they become people that are out looking for the willing. And so they become the next David that's out there doing the hard work.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to put your focus there while you're letting others know, hey, there's grace here. Even if you're not ready now, if you're ready later, my door is always open. Here's my phone number, but please don't waste my time or yours.
Yeah.
And I think that message is important. They need to know that you're available, but you're not going to drag them along. And that's
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
that's the tough part right there. And you have to make some tough decisions for sure. I'm going to switch gears here if you're cool with this. So I want to read the message that you sent to me the other day that led me to wanting to have this discussion. And I told you I've been having a lot of God moments. And this last few weeks, it's just been blowing my mind. And
I've had some crazy ones the past
it,
couple of weeks myself.
and you
So
know what, dude? I needed them, if I'm being honest, because I've been in a little bit of a dry patch of, I know God's there with me all the time, but there are times when I'm not hearing from him. I'm not seeing the little, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to keep persevering. I'm going to keep doing the right thing. I'm going to stay on the path. And I think God's honored by that. But man, it gets tough sometimes. But now I'm in this season where it's like every day something crazy's happening. So I'm listening to our message at church. So last Sunday, and the message is about, the pastor says, I want to unpack the Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing, and the three, the Godhead, and there's three in one God. And I even think that there's people that I'm talking to that might not even be sure on who they should be praying to and what's that look like. And I thought, this is an interesting discussion. I've been listening to this pastor for 20 years. I've never heard this talk. Some of them get repeated, like, oh, I heard this one 3 years ago. But I've never heard this. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I meditated on that and I was appreciative of the message. So then within 48 hours, you type this to me and I'm going to read it. I genuinely do not know how to describe my views on religion. I've never in my life, more than now, believed there's a God. I've seen it, I've felt it, I've seen him work in my life now and can look back and see how he worked in my life even when I was at my lowest. As I continue to look into the Bible, I have an internal battle within myself in that there are so many profound things in the book that apply to life today and how one should live his life as well. But I also find myself in some of the stories of the Bible not really thinking that's the way it really happened. I ask myself, can all these things just be so black and white that they're written in this book and there's no other way it happened? And I feel as though your everyday Christian would damn me for this and tell me I cannot actually believe in God if I don't believe in the Bible. I also believe, I also find myself not seeing Jesus in the same light as others do. I admire Jesus as the chosen one, as God's son, who came down and spread the word of God no matter what, and showing us miracles that only the Son of God could do. And what a badass to walk his cross up that hill, knowing what was about to happen and still never bending on his word. But man, I find myself worshiping God, not worshiping Jesus. It's like I acknowledge Jesus for what he was, but I also don't see Jesus as the one that I need to be bending my knee to and worshiping, as he isn't necessarily my creator. I know Jesus died for my sins, but I don't think Jesus is the one making the things in my life happen every day as they do, or or all of these crazy things that have happened to me along my path. Again, a view that would probably have me thrown out of any normal Southern Baptist church. Man, talk about what are the odds of I hear this message and you send me this. I thought, okay, I'm going to pay attention now. We need to have this talk. Now, you and I could have had this talk over text or a phone call, but man, there are a lot of people that feel this way. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people that feel, oh, I couldn't bring this up at church. If I mention this in men's group, they're going to be talking, get rid of this guy. And you're not wrong. And that's the problem. People mess up. It's the religious people that keep people from knowing Jesus Christ. So I love your heart. And these are questions that everyday people are struggling with. And in a time like we're in right now, I think that there are many people turning to God in droves, but they aren't quite sure. And they don't feel that there's a safe space for them to wrestle with these questions that they're having. It's either accept this or get out of our church. We're not going to wrestle with this. And I think that as Christian people, we need to be saying, hey, what are you wrestling with, man? Let's sit and have this talk together. Not for me to just sell you on why you're wrong, but let's talk about your heart and let's figure out what's going on here. So I thought, man, this is going to be really cool to unpack. So I'm going to read you a scripture reference because every show has a scripture. So this is from Hebrews, the first chapter. It's the opening of Hebrews chapter, verses 1 through 3. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his son. So Jesus used to speak to us through prophets and things back
Hmm.
in the Old Testament. Now, though, he's referring to the New Testament time. God is speaking to us through his son, who he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. That little key right there is something that we don't really study much. That's telling us in no uncertain terms, Jesus made the universe. Now, what? It's crazy, but I'll help. I hopefully will be able to clear that up. The Son is the radiance of God's glory. Now here's the key part. And the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his word. So when we go back and look at the Old Testament, Jesus was creating everything. Jesus was referred to so many times in the Old Testament. And our pastor used a great analogy that helped me because I need to have it a little bit dumbed down, man, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have it in terms like, okay, talk to me like we're having coffee, man. Because
Yeah.
all the I can't do the begat this and all the Bible. I need to have it dumbed down. So here's what he said. He had an egg up on the stage with him. He pulls out this egg. I said, okay, I know eggs. Let's go. He says, all right, there's a shell, there's the white, the slimy that's it, and there's the yolk in there. He says, we can agree this is an egg. Yeah, we can agree on that. We can agree there's 3 parts to this egg. Yeah. He says, now here's the cool thing. If you test the DNA makeup of the shell, the white, and the yolk, and then it gets plugged into something, and someone says, decipher what this substance is, it all comes back to the word egg. The DNA is egg. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
about that slimy part? The DNA is egg. The yolk, it's egg. So although there are 3 separate components, they're all egg. And I thought, I get that. That makes sense to me. And we tend to think that, well, God created me, and then he made Jesus, and Jesus did some miracles and some stuff. And then when Jesus died, he promised the Holy Spirit. So now do I pray to the Holy Spirit and what to, and the answer is, I think whatever's on your heart. But if you're praying to God, you're praying to all 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to understand. And when we talk about, I'll unpack a couple other things that you sent. So there's things in the Bible that if anybody's being honest, I think they're like, really? I mean, how that happened? I mean, because let's talk about that. I mean, because there's crazy stuff in there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
When you talk about the Daniel and his buddies, you're talking about in the furnace and walking out of a furnace. That's that seems crazy to me. You're talking about Noah building the ark. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
The parting of the Red Sea. That seems nuts.
I've always used that one as a reference. Like, and it's funny how it's kind of come full circle. Like, I used to use that, at times in my life when I denounced that there was a God and that like there was anything divine that made and created and
Yeah.
anything like. I'd be like, dude, you're gonna tell me that this dude walked up and just parted the sea? And I'm like, come on, man. And it's kind of funny, like now, 10, 12, whatever years later, it's like I sit back and someone tells me that story and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah.
Here's what helps me, and I think it might help you, because I was taught this, and it just came alive in me instantly when this dude was helping me. He said, "Okay, let's not talk about the Red Sea, and let's not talk about that. Although I believe it's true, and this is this guy talking. I believe it's true because he believes in the scripture in Timothy that says that all scripture is God breathed. So it's the breath of God that made that scripture, even though it was written by men. It was God. They were inspired by God, and so that's what we're taught to believe." He says, let's put all that to the side for this discussion. I said, okay, I'm willing. He says, do you believe at this point in your life, from what you've experienced and been taught and everything else, that Jesus Christ performed miracles, raised people from the dead? Do you believe that he hung on a cross, was dead, was put in a tomb, came out of that tomb, was here again for 40 days, and then ascended to heaven? And I said, I do. He says, okay. He says, I'll even ask you less questions. Did Jesus walk around on this earth? Did he raise people from the dead? And did he himself go from dead to life? I said, yeah. I believe that. He says, me too. He says, and because I believe that, I can believe the rest of it. Because nothing that you're going to go read in the left side of the Bible is crazier than that.
Yeah.
I said, okay, man, I'm with you, because I do believe that with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. Right now, I've chosen to believe it. And I also am not, well, show me proof. I don't have the proof other than my testimony and things
Yeah.
I've seen God do and how I feel and how I've been changed. And I know that there's things that I do and say and feel that are just not me. They
Yeah.
can only come from God. So when he said that to me, and people will challenge me on stuff too, because they, people like to challenge and have discussion, and I'm open to that. So prove to me that, the Red Sea was parted. I said, I don't know how to do that. Well, do you believe it happened? I do. Why? Why do you believe that? Because he walked out of the tomb. That's why I believe it.
Yeah.
Because if that's true, now conversely, if Jesus was just a dude and he was crazy and none of those miracles happened and everybody was a liar, and it's the biggest lie ever perpetrated on men. If it's the biggest lie ever told, and he never walked out of that tomb and it was all a hoax, then the rest of the stuff didn't happen either. But I
Well,
choose to believe he did.
yeah. Well, and you know what, man? Like, as you say that, let's say that was a hoax. Let's say none of that happened. Let's say, that's the way. Yeah. Jesus wasn't this person that people talk about. There was no parting of the sea. There was no this. There was no that.
Yeah.
It still doesn't change how I know what's happened in my life as of now,
Yep.
and some of the experiences that I have. And I think, me and my wife were talking about this for a long time the other night in the kitchen. I said, let's say we just lived in a world where the Bible wasn't a thing. I genuinely still believe, out of all of the things that have happened to me personally, and some of the things some of my experiences over the past like 33 years, it wouldn't change my mind either way if there was a God or not. Because a lot, and I mean, at this point, it's getting to be a lot of these things are undeniable. And it's like, you can't, there's no other explaining it,
Exactly.
And I think people, a lot of people get wrapped up, especially in the space that I've kind of let myself be in. It's like, I'm from a small southern town. Like, dude, I live hard in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
There's as I sit at my house, there's probably 7 churches within a square mile.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Baptist, whatever it may be, and here I am. I've kind of dove myself into, experimenting with psychedelics and doing all this other stuff. So I actually listened to that sermon you sent me the other night.
Oh, cool.
After I'd taken some mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I got a lot out of it, but here's the thing. It's like, and this might be everywhere, I'm sure it is, around here, people, I can tell somebody, I can say, hey man, I believe in God wholeheartedly. But it's like, I just wonder sometimes. I wonder if there's more to the story of the Bible than there is. I wonder if, I genuinely wonder sometimes if some of these other religions that are out there, if we're all praying to the same God, but we're, back when in the beginning times, people were so separated by land and culture and everything that we're all praying and worshiping maybe the same God. It's just different interpretations of the one God that I believe in, and man, if I was to say that to a preacher around here,
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like, well, you don't believe in God. And then my rebuttal to that is always kind of like, well, but I do.
Yeah.
It's just, and it might just be because I'm kind of just now coming around to
Yeah.
like really feeling it deep inside of me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't understand why people think that somebody like me who's kind of, you know, kind of looks and pulls from different places. I'm like, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. I believe in God this way. I believe in Jesus this way. But it's like some of the other things I kind of look at and I'm like, maybe, maybe not. But then I can look at another, religion or someone else's book or Bible and be like, well, that makes sense too. And it almost sounds
Yeah.
eerily similar
Similar.
to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
I do.
it's like people will just damn you for that.
Yeah, and that's a problem. So here's what I believe. First off, I don't disagree with anything that you've said, and I don't like the fact that there are many pastors, leaders in the church that are unwilling to have these conversations. And by have these conversations, here's why I think they're important. I, with all of my heart, believe the biblical Christian doctrine that
Mm-hmm.
there's a three-head God, yeah, Father, Son, Spirit, that Jesus Christ came here, he died for my sins, that I confess him with my mouth, I believe with my heart, he's the Lord and Savior of my life, and I have a place in heaven when I'm done down here. I do believe that, and I try to live my life from that reality. So that being true, I believe that God is so powerful and so loving and so full of mercy and grace that for men and women like you who are, I don't want to even say struggling, but you're curious and you're wrestling with some of this stuff. God is so amazing that he wants that wrestling and those questions because his truth is so undeniable that the more you seek these other avenues just to learn about them, him being the one true God will come to be more real to you than if you weren't willing to have that conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage those thoughts, dialogue, and conversations because I know God is going to use those to ultimately draw you to him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we tell people, don't do that, this is the only way you have to believe, they're going to be posers sitting in the pew every Sunday, and their hearts are never going to be satisfied. We have to allow God to work in us as individuals. And part of the work he might be doing in you is having you go out and read, maybe go read the Quran, maybe
Mm-hmm.
read about some Buddhist stuff, maybe check these things out and unpack these and explore them and have these conversations. Because I think ultimately, God's love, grace, and mercy will bring you back to what I believe is the truth. And I think that you'll be so grounded in your faith then because you had the freedom to go seek out those other things that were on your heart.
Yeah.
Leaders in the church need to encourage people in that, not dissuade them. If you're so sure, that's like if I'm so sure that my company's the one you should work for, I don't want to tell you never ever look about another company, never look into their website. I want you to go look at other companies first because mine is so true that you're going to want to be in my company forever.
Yeah.
I want you to go satisfy those curiosities. So when you finally come back to roost in our company, you're going to stay there forever, man. And you're going to be so bought in. You're going to believe the truth.
Yeah.
So I encourage that. And I don't want you to feel any guilt or shame. And don't let anyone put that on you, man. You are a man of God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just told you I'm not sure about such and such. I don't care about all that. I know your heart and I know who you are as a man, and you are a man of God. And God is going to do powerful things through you. And you need to believe that while you're in a season of seeking and trying to gain that knowledge, because I think it's super important, man. You're a powerful cat. And there are a lot of people that are going to tell you that that's wrong.
Yeah. I had this, I was sitting in there cooking dinner the other night, and I told my wife, I was like, man, I've just been wrestling with something the past few days. And she's like, okay. And I told her, I said, I feel some kind of way. And I said, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's a genetic thing. I don't know if it's in my bloodline from, deep long ago. I don't know what it is. I said, but I find myself, you know, I told her, I said, before I went out to Washington, and had that experience, I said, I felt like I had a laundry list of emotions and feelings and all this stuff all the time. And I said, I feel like a lot of that got out of me. And now my list of emotions and feelings are a lot of the time they're about this short. And it's like very basic things. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, I said, it's really boils down to, it's like, this can sound however it wants. It's like, most days it's like, and this is while I'm seeking and I feel like becoming closer to a person that'll go out and be like, hey man, let me tell you what God's done in my life, becoming that man.
Yeah.
But I find myself a lot during the day. I'm like, man, me partaking in normal society is getting less appealing and appealing every day. And it might be the culture of the world. It might not be, but it's like I told her, I said, my list of emotions get boiled down to, I just want to eat and I want to hunt and be left alone. And some of those are like violent tendencies.
Yeah.
It's just, and I told her, I said, it's just weird to me that I've got all of these, like, for lack of a better term, warrior emotions.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like morphing them into a person that can go out and say, hey man, let me tell you what's happened. Let me tell you how God's led my life here and here. And he's done these things for me. And he's done these things for me.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I think it kind of bothers me sometimes. And this is a reason I really haven't like found a church, is because I cannot, it's very hard for me to stand up, to sit in a pew and listen to a out of shape, incapable person tell me the way that my thoughts need to be led and how my heart and my beliefs need to be led. And I find that very hard to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the only one that feels like that. I kind of think sometimes not.
So no, you're not. I just wrote down a note here. So you're experiencing God's pruning in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a season where we're pruning all of our stuff back. It's spring and the flowers get cut back and everything. So there's going to be new growth. New growth wasn't going to happen in you with all that other baggage and all that other crap.
No.
It had to be cut away. So you might say, well, that experience I had with Tyler cut that away. Or God uses different things to prune. Okay. I believe God did a pruning in your life and you're down to the basal level of feelings and emotions. So you're cut down to the nubs now. And now the growth that comes is going to be God growth.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to want to go share that. And you're going to want to go encourage other people in that. And your honesty and transparency are what people are going to respond to. And I want to encourage you to continue to do that stuff, because it's so easy when we don't have a full understanding. Well, I don't understand what that verse means or that verse means. That's okay. Just start where you're at. You have a testimony, and that's the main thing. And honesty and transparency are what people respect. You're also an overcomer, and people will listen to overcomers. And I think that this season is going to be very, very interesting. I also want to encourage you, though. It is important to, study anything you want. Go read that or look into that. But make sure that you're spending time in the Bible. And it can be a little bit daunting. But where do I open it up to? And that's why sometimes, you'll look at your phone probably first thing in the morning sometimes and like, oh, what's Jim got here? And I don't send you a big book of, hey, how you doing? And here's what's going on with my life. I send you a scripture. And it's a scripture that's not just something random. It's like, this might be for David, because God will put that on my heart. He's like, that scripture's for David. Get that over to him. And here's what's fun is, because I started becoming familiarized with the Bible by people sending me encouraging things. Then I would go actually look them up in a physical Bible.
Yeah.
And I get to see the context. Okay, so what's going on here? Oh, it's from this book. Well, who wrote this? And when was it written? And what is it about? What was written before this scripture and after this? And that's a good way to jump into the Bible. But that word will come alive. And that's what's interesting, because I read a lot of books, man. But the Bible, I mean, I'm telling you what, it's rare that I'll pick up a book and sometimes it's putting goosebumps on my arm. Sometimes it's got me in tears. Sometimes it's got me so motivated to go do something, or I'll read something for the 100th time. And I'm like, wow, just like this Hebrews 1 scripture that we went over, when I was putting this together the other day and like last night, I was like, wait a second. I've never had that come alive like that. That's telling me that Jesus made the universe.
Yeah.
What? I've read that 100 times, dude. But so often it's just like doing our reading and going through it. But man, you're on the right track, dude. I think it's amazing. I think a lot of people are going to are going to get a lot out of what you're sharing here.
Let me ask you
Go,
something.
man.
You ever listen to Rogan?
Oh, all the time, man.
So there was a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's the big mushroom guy. He had him on a few weeks ago.
Okay.
I don't know if you listened to it. So I'm getting to a point, and I think, I really think there's a connection that people haven't put together with God and psychedelics, particularly psilocybin mushrooms. I think that there's a strong connection there. And I think for people that are just on the fringe and they're just like, man, I don't know. Like, I want to believe, but it's like,
Yeah.
I can't feel it in my heart. I can't feel it in my soul. I, truly think that there's a connection there. A lot of people, they say, well, marijuana and mushrooms, they come from the earth, so God put them here. And it's like, yeah, that could very well be true. But, there's also methamphetamines in the world, and I don't think God put methamphetamine in the world.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a connection, and it's one that as I continue to go down this path, I keep putting it together, and I keep having that my faith gets stronger every time I have an experience with psychedelics.
So that's interesting. I want to speak to that because I promise you, we're going to get some comments on this show about that particular topic right there. And people feel really freaking strongly about it. Like, no, I can't. So I want to have that discussion. Here's my thoughts on that. I've not experienced that. And I shared this with you when you were here. Back when I was a kid, I did plenty of LSD and ate mushrooms and the whole thing, but it wasn't spiritual for me. It was just being a kid and part
Yeah,
of
there wasn't purpose behind it.
Right. So, and I haven't experienced that. Now, I'm also not one that's, that's blasphemy. I'm opposed to that. So I thought a lot about that in the last couple of months. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that you're wrong because I don't know. But I do think that I believe that there is an earthly realm, and we're operating in that. We're sitting here talking, and there's a supernatural realm. And when I talk about thin places and God winking at us, those God winks, those are places where that barrier between the two realms gets really paper thin. Now, I can see how in somebody's mind who hasn't, maybe they haven't had the experience of the thin places in other ways, that could be a realm. They're like, wow, I've taken these mushrooms and I'm doing this, whatever. That thin place they experience. And I think that what you're talking about possibly could be you're closer to the supernatural realm than the earthly realm while you're doing that. And I think that could be deemed, you know what? I feel a little closer to God and I've had some clarity that I didn't have before because they're experienced in thin places. And they may experience those same supernatural encounters in thin places that I've been blessed to experience in the absence of taking those things. So I would never sit here and say, nope, 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 no. I mean, we need to be open-minded, and we don't know everything, man. And the pastor that's down the street, he doesn't know everything either, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't. Now, I do believe that the Bible's true. So there are things I'm not going to negotiate with a lot of people. And hey, let Jim, maybe Jesus wasn't that, I'm not going to have that talk because my faith in my life is based in that. But I'm also not going to hate somebody that doesn't believe that.
Yeah. Well, if that's what you believe in, you shouldn't bend on it.
Yeah, but
You
I'm
should,
also I
because
want to be open-minded and show love and understanding to other people. Be like, "Hey, you know what? Did you hear David Chatman got closer to God by taking mushrooms? That really pisses me off." If you've gotten closer to God, let's
what does it
go.
matter? Yeah, what does it matter?
Who am I to say? Because we believe in Jesus, all of a sudden we have the moral authority to be telling you how you should get closer to God? Because
Hmm.
my way is the only way. I'm done with those kinds of people, man.
Yeah, man, I did, and that's a really bad. It's really bad around my region. Just and it might be everywhere, but especially here, it's like, my argument to that is like, well, what does it matter if I'm not living the same life I was living? If I can sit here and tell you like, hey, man, you and me believe in the same God. You found him a certain way. I found him another way. And now I'm out here. I'm living a better life.
Yeah,
Openly right now admitting, saying, hey, man, God's done some crazy things for me.
yeah,
He has
yeah,
led me to this point, and I don't think he's done leading me further and further down this
yeah,
path of living a better life, of
yeah,
helping people, of putting me in the right places and
yeah.
doing the right things. What does it matter?
Yeah, I think you're a change agent, dude. I do, and I think you're in that region for a reason. I
Could
really
be.
believe that.
It's getting a
And
little old, but
right? Now
yeah,
to
it's
speak
getting.
to what you just said, to me, it's kinda like this. Let's say that there's 2 guys that really wanna get healthy, and we're gonna start lifting weights to get there.
Mhm.
And you are gonna get healthy by doing you're gonna stimulate your muscle growth by you're gonna go heavy, man, almost all the time. You're gonna do 6 reps, and you might even do some 1 rep sets.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's your thing. But I'm like, based I'm a little bit older and my joints and this and that. I'm going to stimulate my muscles by going, I might even do 22 to 25 reps with some lighter weight. And I'm going to be really slow on my eccentric. And I'm going to really focus on that mind muscle connection. But I'm going to go light and high reps. And if we're both seeing results, for me to say, hey, you know what, Chapman, I mean, this guy's out there. He doesn't have any idea. We're
Yeah.
getting to the same ultimate finale here.
Yeah.
And we should want to learn from each other. And we should want to encourage each other in that because especially the world's freaking dark right now, man.
That's
And I
pretty cool.
feel that the darkness is getting more prominent. We need to come together as people that love and believe in God and say, hey, you know what? Let's not focus on the differences. Maybe we could go to lunch with the Mormon family who believes some stuff we think's a little crazy. Hey, do you believe Jesus died for your sins? Yep. Okay, let's start from that commonality
Yeah.
and let's bond together there. I don't want to talk about, yeah, but they believe that. Okay, great. Well, Catholics, this and that. Okay, let's talk about Jesus Christ. Let's talk about where are our commonalities. And as we come together, we're all going to learn from each other. And like I said, we don't have to worry about doing all the work. God will do all of that when our hearts are open and receptive. When we're willing to show mercy and grace to each other, God's mercy and grace that he freely pours out upon us will come to the forefront. And that's where we're going to have real change. And we're going to see communities and families and countries and the world change, man. That's what it's going to take.
Yeah. And in a situation like you're talking about, like, hey, let's all go to lunch with this family and this family and this family. I think, and this is especially from where I'm from, people take those situations like that, and they're like, well, I'm going to use this time I'm going to convert these people.
Yep.
It's like, hey, man, there's a time and a place to
Yep.
bring that up.
Yeah.
And what my thing is, it's like, well, if we're openly admitting to believing like in the same beliefs, the same God, it's like, hey, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe this? Yes, 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 and yes. Well, why are you burning up time trying to
Yeah.
like, well, listen, man, I know you're a Presbyterian and I'm Christian, I'm just a
Yeah.
Baptist, but you need to be a Baptist, man. It's like,
Yeah.
does it
Yeah.
matter?
That's what I'm talking
Does
about.
it matter that much?
Yep.
If we're
That's
on
the
the
thing.
same whole page, does it matter that much how you got there? Or
I
I
agree
don't
with
know
you.
why we get wrapped up in that so bad.
I agree with you. Our need to be right is more than our need to have fellowship. And I believe in this. I believe that I should always be witnessing to other people, but I should only open my mouth when necessary.
It's like a couple of weeks ago, I was at a funeral, and loosely related family member. And the guy that was doing the service, he spent this much time preaching about the life of this person that had just passed on. And he was trying to use this time to like convert people. Now I'm gonna tell you, I'll just be honest. It was my cousin who, me and her are super close. It was her mom had died. She had got cancer and died. Now my cousin, you want to talk about living a rough life? This girl, she's been through it, man. When we were young, whew, son, I mean, we're talking. You want to talk about having a crazy story? She's got a good story too. And I think it's in our bloodline to have pretty good stories like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of her friends who had also lived the same life as me and her, they were there, and this guy was standing up there and he's preaching, and I'm just thinking like, hey, and he's like a big, really big church pastor. And I just had the thought, I'm like, man, do you think this is the best time to be doing this? I understand a lot of the stuff you're saying, but it's like, you're almost being pushy at this point. Like you're being pushy, and you're being pushy at a funeral. And that's a really bad trend. I've been to enough funerals and held some for enough of my own family members.
Same.
It seems to be this thing where it's like, guys, I don't know if this is the time to be doing that. And I think people, especially like people that are preaching about a Christian God, like the one that we're talking about believing in, it's like, maybe sometimes we need to listen and quit trying to speak and converse and convert. I mean, it's like, I feel like if you work your way into some people, a time will present itself. And when those people are ready, like you were saying earlier, they'll come to it.
Yeah.
But I do feel like a really bad problem with, a lot of these Christians, especially, like I said, especially around my areas, they're pushy. They want you to stop at the grocery store and they're going to try to save you in the grocery aisle and say, hey man, let's pray in the grocery. I'm like, hey man, and I feel like a lot of people, sometimes that does worse than good. I don't know if you think that way, but
so I do agree that it can come across pushy, but I think that for most people it does come from a place of love.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to pray for discernment. One of the things that I love about the Bible is that it instructs me to pray for wisdom and discernment, because I don't have those things inherently apart from God. So I'll tell you this. If I was in the grocery store, and I told the story on one of the recent shows about I prayed for a homeless dude outside of Whole Foods. That's not me, right? But when I know I was sitting in my car and God told me I had to go do that, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
In that instance, I'm going to go pray for this dude. And that the discernment in that was, so in other words, I wasn't driving around like, you know what? I want to feel better about myself today. I'm going to go find a guy to pray for.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. That's kind of the difference, because I've had people pull me aside and be like, hey man, I don't know why, but you care if you and me pray together? And this is, dude, these were some bad times, like, and I felt like God was speaking to them to speak to me, to keep me going. And I think just the difference was they weren't like, they didn't pull me aside and be like, hey man, will you stand here right now and give your life? It's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Dude, the spot that I'm in, that's the last thing I'm going to do while we're
exactly
standing.
Right.
Now, I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I look back on some of those times now and I'm like, man, I can't believe that happened right then at that time with that person. I was telling that story to a buddy the other night. I had a guy I kind of grew up with, hadn't seen him in years. I'm probably like 22 years old. I'm at the gym at 9:00 at night, high on Percocet, trying to bench, and this guy I hadn't seen comes in. He's like, hey man, this is 9:00 at night.
Yeah.
in a little gym, and I'm like, man, I ain't seen this dude in forever. And we get to talking, and I'm like, where you been at, man? Like, we're loose acquaintances. And he's like, man, he said, I had to get out of here, dude. He was living that life too. And he said, I had to get out of here, man. He said, I knew where I was about to go. And he said, I moved and I found God and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm thinking, phew, man, you're probably looking at me like I'm trash, And he trained for a little bit and I was still in the middle of training and he was walking out and he's like, hey, man, I have to do this. He said, will you please come over here in the corner and just let me pray for you?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, man, that was at a time where I didn't care if I lived or died.
Yeah.
I didn't care either way.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I said, yeah, that's cool. And I really wasn't open to stuff like that at that point in life. He pulls me aside. He prays with me. We're in the middle. There's some people in there and never seen that guy again once in my whole life.
No kidding.
And I was telling me and my buddy, we're kind of having a conversation about God. He's got off the path pretty bad. And I think he's finding his way back to it a little bit now as he's later in life. And I was telling him that story and I said, yeah, dude, I've never seen that guy again. I don't know where he's at, what he does or nothing. I said, but I look back at that now and I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There's one of those moments in time where it's like, you leaving? Love you. There's one of those moments in time where I'm like, he just put his hand out there and he found somebody to use it.
That's it. God wink.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it's kind of crazy now because now I can look back at, and man, I've had so many of those moments.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, in my head, in my heart, I was not ready to. I'm like, I would throw it off and ignore it.
Yeah.
And I didn't care nothing about it.
I love it.
And I look back at that now and I'm like, wow, because I thought about that, him doing that. I was like, why did that happen? Why did he do this? And why did he do that? Well, that kept me going for a few days.
Yeah.
Wondering about that. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's great, dude.
Stuff like that. And I know sometimes it's like, it gets to the point where you ignore things like that.
Yeah.
And
we can become desensitized to those things and we need to be careful to not. We just need to be open to the things of the Spirit and without trying to control it all. That's the whole thing,
Hey, Jim, hold on one second.
Yeah, man.
I'll be right back. Sorry about this.
Take your time. Okay, so I hit the pause and resume. So I think I got that thing figured out. Look at that.
Yeah, real life problem. So
it happens. Hey, so I want to switch gears if we can, because I while I have you, I want to talk about manhood stuff. Because I know that fires both of us up, and there's been a couple instances of late where I've gotten some messages. I'm like, okay, this topic keeps coming up. So I want to read you something. This is from I call this gal a good friend of the show. She's a really neat lady. We correspond a lot, and she sent me this message. So I'm going to read you the message and my response, and I'm going to get your thoughts on it. Okay. The discrimination I've endured by young white men under 45 in the last 7 years is astounding. They're what I'd assume fall into that incel category. Now, do you know what this is, David? Incel? I had to look this up too. Involuntarily celibate.
Okay.
In other words, dudes that can't get chicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's extremely odd, and it's not so much discrimination as it is a hate for a woman of similar age being in a position they'd like to reach in their career. The old guys at work are pretty dang cool. They look at me like a daughter or granddaughter once they get past the boobs. These young, angry men, they're disturbing to me. And that's a lot of why Jordan Peterson interested me so much. This strange, weak man thing we have going on in this country is frightening, and they're from both the far left and far right politically. I'd be interested to know your take on what is going on with young men in today's world. Here's what I sent her back. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh boy, I have a lot of thoughts. First off, testosterone levels have dropped dramatically due to a lot of factors, including environmental factors. Secondly, these younger males have been told masculinity is toxic and they're afraid to be strong leaders. The feminization of society has finally trickled down to young boys who are now coming of age. Porn has broken their brains. They no longer desire to pursue women because they get satisfied at home and then get back to playing their video games. Males can't evolve into men without a confidence that comes from being physically strong and getting the girl. And the failures and adversity that come with these pursuits teach us to persevere and never give up. Thoughts?
You're spot on with that. And, I'll say this too, and this is just from me kind of, being around a bunch of younger men now, especially, is like my age group isn't giving them good examples. So, I told you about the guys at the alternative school. The men that work there, dude, they're frail men. They're soft. And I go around to all these schools now, and I see these teachers and these counselors and it's like there's not a lot of what you would consider very manly men hanging around that age group. And you got to think if these boys are coming through high school, especially sometimes this gets diluted with, some of the guys that they're going to play sports, they're going to be around coaches and stuff like that. But even still, I look at some of the teachers, the coaches, the this, the that, the people, they've got social media, they're hearing all this crap. Like you said, they've got porn. They don't have to have a girl.
Yep.
They don't have to. And this is coming from somebody, dude, I used to watch the crap out of porn.
Yeah.
And I was still getting women. Like it was just, it was another addiction that I had to get over at a certain point in life. I don't think the generation behind me has a lot of super masculine men to look at in their everyday lives and take from.
Yeah.
Most of the guys my age, they're frail, they're fat, they're weak. They can't defend themselves. They're not out here just doing like high testosterone activities. And that can be whatever it is. There's a page on Instagram I've found since I've had it. It's called like high testosterone men. And all it is like these little videos of dudes just like MMA fighters and doing jujitsu and lifting weights and shooting guns and doing all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this younger generation has gotten away from that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the people that's in the age class older than them, well, they're not doing it either.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, the age class that was older than me, I had some freaking men to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
I had youth football coaches getting off of work
with
oil stains on their shirts and their forearms were this freaking big around, yelling at us and cussing us like dogs.
Yep. Same.
Guess what? That helped because most of us from that youth football team, we all grew up. We all played sports year round. We all got into fights. We all, wanted girls real bad.
Yep.
We all, as soon as like lifting weights came into the play, we were into the picture. We were all lifting weights. We were all doing all these things. And somewhere the age group a little bit younger than me, they don't like doing that stuff no more.
Yep.
And they don't like doing these high testosterone, hard activities like when I was growing up, I enjoyed doing.
Yep.
Man, the only thing we were worried about, when I was in like high school and stuff was who could do the strongest thing, who could do the stupidest, craziest thing to impress all the girls.
That's it.
So when I hear about men that aren't interested in women and they're just like cool with it, I don't know how, dude.
And they're angry about it. So what we've got is frail, angry non-masculine males
Mm-hmm.
running around treating women like crap,
Mm-hmm.
not understanding how to respect women or men, and
Mm-hmm.
feel entitled to act however they want, identify however they want, and try to get us to buy into their freaking fantasies. And this generation is a problem. I do you know Wild at Heart?
Yeah,
Okay, so the book Wild at Heart is one of those life-changing
that's
books.
a good book. Yeah, very
By
good.
John Eldridge, and I took a couple notes from it. The general theme of the book, for the audience that might not know, is it says that boys need to feel that they have what it takes. So to win the battle, to get the girl, they're good enough, right? Boys, hey, I have what it takes, and you only get to find out if you have what it takes by being tested.
Mm-hmm.
And girls, they need to feel worthy of pursuit. That's what John Eldridge teaches. So little girls need to feel that they are worthy of being pursued. And what's happening is we're failing boys and girls in both of those aspects right now. We're teaching, basically we're forcing through toxic feminism is what I'd like to call it. We're forcing these young girls to go out there, and instead of feeling like they're worthy of pursuit, we're forcing them to go out and prove that they have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's messing things up.
Yeah.
And so these kids are now, over time, they grow up into the next generation of adults, and they're in the workforce, and they're supposed to become the leaders, and that gets a little scary. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that individually we can try to be part of the solution. You're
Well, that is
certainly part of the solution, bro. I mean, when you're talking to me about impacting these young men, and you're going to the alternative school and putting in the work there, and the coaching and all these things, man, that's what we need to do. And then you're going to build people that go out and impact. And that's what we're talking about. And we
Mm-hmm.
need, where does Priscilla always teach us? He says, man, personal excellence.
Yeah.
We have to focus on that. I saw your post on Instagram this morning, on your stories of getting at it. What were you on, the Airdyne?
I was
Dude.
on the air. Yeah, I was on
Yeah.
that. So I got up and so I've over the past month I've swapped to the carnivore diet,
Yeah.
but I carb cycle. So once every 8 days, I'll allow my body carbs because dude. I mean, I train about every day,
Yeah.
and it gets to the point where I'm like, ugh, I'm like I need a little bit of something.
Yep.
But through the first 7 days of it, carnivore,
Yeah.
nothing. It's meat, eggs, butter.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And so the thing I've noticed is in the mornings, usually when I would lift, I haven't had it in me to like lift hard. But I'm like, okay, in this morning, man, I got out of bed, I was hurting. My body was hurting. I'm like, dude, I am tired. I'm wrecked. And I'm like, okay, get up. I got up. It's like 5 o'clock. I go out here. I've got a nice ruck bag. It's probably about 50, 55 pounds right now. And before I had to sit here, I had to get my thoughts together. I strapped it on, did a couple of miles with it, come in here on the Airdyne. I was like, I'm going to go to 150 cows before I get off, and then I'll do something else.
Yeah.
And dude, I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like it this morning
Yeah.
at all. I
Yeah.
fucking did not. But you know what, man? As soon as you get started, I got a half mile
You're
into that
gold.
ruck walk. I was good, dude.
Yeah, you're
I'm
gold.
good. I'm like, I can do anything today.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like the men that a lot of these boys are exposed to every single day, they're not doing that, dude.
No.
They're not, because it's becoming a less and less of a thing. I remember I just thought of this example. I was on JV football, and for the first time ever, I was going up against a kid. We were playing at another high school. I was going against a kid, and dude, he was eating my lunch all game. Stronger than me, faster than me, hit harder. I mean, he was taking it to my ass, dude. I mean, I was having a hard time. And I think it was after the game, I'm standing there, my hands on my hips, kind of, pouting about it. And my coach comes up to me, who is a man's man. And he comes up and he's like, well, what are you pouting about, son? And I'm like, man, I just couldn't do nothing. I had like one tackle all game. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And he got real, real close to my face. And he's like, well, maybe you should work harder. and that won't happen, will it? And at
right.
first it pissed me off. I'm like,
Yep.
man, I work hard.
Yep.
And then I got to thinking, I'm like, well, I don't work harder than that kid that just ate my lunch for 90 minutes,
Yep.
Maybe that is what I should do.
Yep.
And I think stuff like that's the problem is everybody's scared to say, hey man, you're not doing good enough.
Yep.
You're
That's
pissing,
exactly
you're moaning, you're whining, you're not working hard enough.
Yep.
Oh, you can, well, okay, cool, man. You can bench 225. Well, why don't you do better? Why don't you do better? Why don't you work harder? Why don't you do better? And nobody's telling kids that are 25 and younger ain't that anymore. I do get tickled sometimes. I train in my garage most of the time, but if I'm out, I'll go to like a public gym, and it does give me some hope. Sometimes I'll see like a group of 18-year-old dudes in there getting after it a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But that's not the majority anymore.
Not the norm, is it? No.
And I'll say this, you said the testosterone levels have dropped. So, I've got to go around and bounce around to all these middle schools and high schools the past couple of months. I don't know why this is. I've got my own theories on it. The girls are becoming far more developed physically than as opposed to when I was in school.
Yeah.
I mean, these girls, you wouldn't know the difference in their age sometime if they told you they were 19 or 20 years old.
Exactly.
But the boys have regressed back down. Some of these kids tell me they're 17 years old, and I'm like, no way.
Exactly. Here, let me speak to that. So on Instagram, there's all kinds of, you'll see like parents will put their kids' prom pictures and stuff up, right? So there's a lot of that going on now. And I'm looking at these prom pictures and I'm thinking to myself, this looks like a beautiful young woman with her little brother. This woman looks like a 20-year-old model.
Yeah.
In this beautiful gown, and she's with a kid that looks like he's playing dress up in his dad's tuxedo, who's 110 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are we talking about? Guys, it's crazy, man.
I don't know. And I tell you what, and it does start. It starts at home. It's like if you're a man and you have a boy, especially, and you don't have that boy, if you're not making yourself better, that boy's not going to think he has to do any better.
Yeah.
If you're not leading by example of like, hey man, in this house, we get up and
we get after it.
And we do this, and these are the foods we eat. I explained to my son last night, we went to the store, we come back, we bought 15 dozen eggs, and those will get ran through quick. And I said, I told him, I said, dude, I want you to look at our refrigerator. There's meat, there's eggs, there's milk, there's butter, there's, Greek yogurt. I said, no other, this is what separates you, me, and your mom from all the neighborhood kids, from your buddies at school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the difference, man. I said, it starts here. It starts with me and you going out in the driveway and doing push-up contests with each other.
Yeah.
And
I
don't know why a grown man, I tell this to my wife too sometimes. I'm like, every day, every morning I get out of the shower, or I get out of bed, I have to look at myself in the mirror. And I know that other people do too. So when I see some of these fathers that I know are fathers, I see their kids at wrestling or whatever it may be, and there's nothing to them, or there's too much to them. They're 100 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
I think to myself, I say, you have to look at yourself in the mirror every day, and somehow you've come to the conclusion that this is okay. I'm fine with this. Yeah. Whereas I look at myself every day and I'm like, dude, I got to get after it.
Well, I'll tell you what, dude. So I'm out of my comfort zone because I'm doing 75 hard. So I got to take a picture of my underwear every day, man.
Every day. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I see it. Right. Yeah. So it's one thing to look in the mirror and you're getting out of the shower and everything, and you're kind of used to seeing that. But when you see pictures of yourself every day, you're like, okay. And I got to get after it, because I don't beat myself up about it. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be better tomorrow. And next Monday's picture is going to look better than today's picture did. And the discipline that takes, it's impacted every part of my life, man. And I can tell you at 52 years old, I've never been in better shape. And I was going back, so I used the Fit Track thing, and you go back, months and a year or whatever, and it gives you all your metrics, right? Your fat mass and your muscle, and on and on. So since last July, I put on 15 pounds, that's a good thing for me.
Yeah.
And so according to the metrics, it's about 9 pounds of muscle and about 6 pounds of non-muscle, probably fat. But maybe a little bone density, but maybe 6 pounds of fat and 9 pounds of muscle. I'll take it. And I do my blood work frequently, and I've seen what's happened to my testosterone levels, and they've just about doubled in 5 months. Now, there's a little bit of gear behind that too, and it is what it is, and better living through science. But it's changed everything, and the trajectory I'm on is at 53, I'm going to be better than 52, and there's no reason to be afraid of getting older. Move weight, watch what's going in your body, train, read, study, pray. These are things that are going to help us every single day. And we need to build ourselves into men that are going to be the example. You got a 20-year head start on me, bro. And think the impact that you're going to make, man. I love hanging with you.
I tell you, this would make me feel some kind of way. And I see it close in my life. It's like, there's a couple of, so like me, and then there's a couple of the dads, and I just keep referring back to like my kids' wrestling team.
Yeah.
It's really easy to see these dynamics between the fathers and the kids.
Yeah.
There's me, and there's like a couple other dudes that train and that are, bigger and all this other stuff. And it's funny how other men's children gravitate to us.
Of course.
Than they do their own fathers.
Yes.
And they're like, oh man, you freaking strong, freaking this and that and this and that. And I'm like, man, if I see my kid admiring another man like that, simply off of me training for an hour and a half a day and eating meat and eggs, you know what I'm saying? That would bother me really bad.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what it is, and this is this world, and this is us as men. It's like we think whoever's got the most money is the man. Yeah. And in the past few months, I've had to distance myself from a lot of people that think that way, that think, well, you're not, hey man, you're not a man if you're not out here making bukus of money, and you're not a man if your job isn't this, and you're not doing this, and you're not part of this profession, and you're not driving this. It's like, well, you're not a man. It's like, who's to say that, dude?
So I'll tell you this, because I'm working on making some noticeable physical changes, and I'm seeing some good results, and people I haven't seen for a while can see the results and stuff. So it comes up when I see these dudes, and they're asking me, what's the motivation? Why, what? I said, the motivation is I want to be my best and focus on personal excellence. And I want to be an example, and I want to be strong, fit, and capable as I'm getting older. I said, but you know what the main motivation is? With the year that I've been through with, money and the divorce and all these kinds of things, I'm building stuff that nobody can come and take.
Yeah.
Nobody can come and take.
Because only you have.
I'm making, because I did it.
Yeah.
And I also, I give credit to God, and he keeps me healthy and gives me the strength and all those things. But no judge is going to tell me I need to go give half of my gains to my ex-wife. No one's coming to take it from me, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to focus my life on building things no one can come and take from me, and then becoming a man I admire and respect, so that my testimony and my example will help other men become who they are destined to become. That's what I'm all about in this season of life. I'm going to read you something.
Okay.
So in a few of these episodes, I've been writing a little finishing rant. So I'm going to go on my little rant here. You okay?
Okay.
I write, I'm tired of being a bystander, watching men operate in the limiting belief that they don't have the power to create the life they want to live. They work from their home offices, logging into the computer every day, doing a job they hate to pay the minimum on their bills and never get ahead or build anything of any lasting impact. They keep shooting up the drug of comfort and convince themselves it's because that's what a provider must do. They get fatter, more depressed, weaker, angrier, more bitter, They have less sex. They become like the non-player characters in video games. Not me. I'm going to make the life I want to live, and my purpose is to help others do the same. And I'm going to go all out every day to accomplish that. David, what's next for you, bro?
I don't know.
It's okay to not know.
And I think I've gotten to where I'm being okay with not knowing. I've been toying with a bunch of ideas, like for my own side projects, and they'll come. I keep putting a time limit on everything, and I can't put a time limit on it. There's no, it's like I said earlier when we first started, like what I'm doing right now, I used to think about 10 years ago, and now I'm doing it,
Right.
I don't know. I think right now I'm just kind of being led to where I'm supposed to be at it all the time. And the thing with me is just continually being like overcome with like faith that I'm just like, it's happening. It's going to happen. I'm going to be, as long as I keep my eyes forward.
Yeah.
And keep doing what I'm doing and keep bettering myself, everything will keep falling into place and just not reverting back to anything. And it's getting easier and easier for me as the weeks go by, because I keep having these little itty bitty things happen. I'm like, okay, it's happening.
God's winking at you, bro.
And things are coming along. And it's like, it's also getting easier for me too. And this kind of plays back to what you were just saying. It's like, man, I'm starting to find people where I'm like, oh, I'll think about it like on a morning like this morning where I'm like, oh God, I don't want to do this. I'm like, well, them other dudes are out. They're up right now. It's 5 o'clock and they're up. They're getting after it. And here you are debating whether you want to put your shoes on and start walking out the door.
That's it.
And it's like, dude, it immediately becomes non-negotiable. I'm like, and I think that's one thing. For the first time in my life, it's like I'm finding my non-negotiables of, hey man, this is what makes me a better person. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to bend on it. I'm not going to break on it.
Yeah.
It's just becoming easy because it's becoming enjoyable because I'm seeing how it's working in different aspects. You know what I mean? And it's like,
right. Yes.
Greg put something up the other day talking about only eating steak, eggs, and apples for like 3 months. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, dude. Yep. Because I can't.
I commented on that too. Same. Yeah.
Yeah. I, as a man now, the man that I know I am, I can't want to be ranked up here with other men when they're willing to do things I'm not willing to do.
That's it.
Not going to happen. Like you can't sit here and be like, well, man, it'd be cool if I could do this and link up with these people. I told you a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, hey man, I just stay getting ready so I don't have to get ready.
That's it.
And because I can feel it somewhere in me, some opportunities are going to open down the road where it's going to be, and this is going to be physically, mentally, me continuing to have a story to tell that's like, I'm out here doing this and this and this. So it's like, I have to keep getting ready all the time so that whenever these opportunities arise with whoever or wherever or whatever it may be, I'm ready to call on it. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm ready now. I don't have to get ready. I've been getting ready my whole life. And I'm getting ready every day right now.
I live in a constant state of preparation, man.
Yeah, so that I don't have to be like, oh man, I got to get my shit together. It's like, hey man, I'm trying to get it together every day. And it's not like I don't have like, dude, I'm a pretty normal person and have normal person lives, like problems, but it's like,
same.
It's getting to the point where it's like, if I control what I can control every day, and sometimes, people say, well, you can control your attitude and your feelings. It's like, yeah, sometimes you got to kind of get that in check. But it's like, I know that I can control what I do with my body, the words that come out of my mouth, who I speak them to, what goes into my body, like the work, the effort that I put in, the things I'm listening to, stuff like that. And it's like, if I keep doing all these things, these opportunities that I know are ahead of me, I'm here just waiting to receive them.
I'm excited to see what they are for you, man. I like reconnecting with you, and I appreciate you coming back on. The audience is going to love this. We're going to get some good comments, and we're going to get some of the zealots out there telling us that we don't understand Jesus. And you know what? Let's spark some conversation. Anybody wants to get in touch with David, David Chatman on Instagram. If they type in your name, it'll come up. It's like D Chatman 1111, something like that. And then anyone who wants to reach out to David can get with me too. I'll hook you guys up. You can comment on the YouTube. You can send an email to social@ministryoffreedom.show. I can get him. I can put your email on the YouTube comments, and in case people reach out to you.
I had a guy 2 weeks ago email me out of the blue. He was like, "Hey man, I just listened to that episode on Greg's show, and dude, he wrote me like a transcript of stuff." And I had I had a couple of people email me that listen to our show.
Yeah, nice.
That were like, and I think it's a lot of people that have lived a hard life, but they haven't had a way to tell it, or they're embarrassed to tell it.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, I ain't embarrassed to tell a thing, dude.
That's right.
I'm just a man.
That's right. You know, we're gonna do this again, bro.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I appreciate it, man. We're about an hour 36 right now, so that's about a good show length. And so we're gonna sign off. You all good?
Yeah, brothers.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.